Yeah. It's going to be interesting because I'm sure the betting line has indeed shifted in the last 24 hours. Why? Because, like you said, the Hawks got their guy in Quin Snyder. They gave him a 5-year deal, reportedly, including this year. He, of course, was the hottest coach out on the market. So it wasn't shocking that the Hawks went after him. He's actually the first name I came up with about a month and a half or two ago when that conversation came up. Will Nate leave? Does Nate want to leave? Do the Hawks want him to leave? And I remember saying, well, whenever he does, Quin Snyder's at the top of the list. So I'm
Indeed.
excited. I think it's a really, really great hire for them. But what really threw us off, if we're all being honest here, started about 5, 6 days ago
Right.
when we heard that Nate McMillan was relieved of his duties. Very odd time because we're talking about 5 days after the All-Star break began, and there wasn't a peep. And then it
Mm-hmm.
became clear, like, they're on mission to go after somebody whom they feel is a guy that other teams are going to come after. They're going to go after full force.
Right.
That said, the Hawks seem very intent on getting their guy, but to get him hired on Sunday with 21 games left in the season, why were they so intent on hiring him, do you think, starting him potentially this season to maybe get them going as early as tomorrow's game against the Wizards?
You know what? T. This speaks to me as because he was interested. He was interested in taking a job. What did we talk about as far as like up and coming head coach coming into this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know that Tony Ressler's starting to get some of those things as being a meddling owner. You got a young first-time general manager in Landry Fields and a first-time executive anything and assistant general manager Kyle Korver. So, and
Mm-hmm.
you got Nick Ressler being reportedly calling the shots over Travis Schlenk and one of the reasons why he got fired. So it has just been a poop storm of stuff circling around his team. And for a guy like Quin Snyder, who is, to be honest with you, as far as what he's done as a head coach and as far as not having any real baggage around him, because some
Mm-hmm.
people can make a case for Ime Doka being the best available head coach out there.
Sure.
So I think that for him to be interested, and for Tony Ressler being willing to go ahead and pay for that type of situation, reportedly
Mm-hmm.
or allegedly that he got is about $8 million a year for those five
Yes.
years. So
Mm-hmm.
so those are some of the things that I feel like what made this a match made in heaven, right? You
Yeah.
got a guy who's interested in coming in because, and you know why he's interested, folks? Because the team has talent.
Yes.
So I think that's one thing people forget. Like, yeah, the Hawks look so good. They went 2-0 without Nate. That just goes to show. It goes to show that this team has
Has
talent, and
talent.
these doggone boys, these players were right, T. The
Yep.
players were right. It's not all on Nate. It's on us. What was that message that we talked about as far as those guys just consistency? That the message was clear as day. Those guys, the ones that spoke on the first day, Clint
Mm-hmm.
Capella, DeJounte, it's not all on Nate. It's on us. And I think that, when you have a coach like Quin Snyder saying, you know what? Like, I'm willing to come in and go do this thing, get this thing rolling right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a little weird because the coaching staff is still going to remain the same. Nate
Mm-hmm.
McMillan's son is still on the coaching staff. And
Mm-hmm.
they said that, Woj said that they will remain
Yeah.
and they will remain, for the rest of the season. So it's going to be some grown men conversations, I feel, within the next couple of days or 24 hours because they got a game tomorrow, like you mentioned. So I think I think all in all, though, I feel like it was a perfect match for both parties because
Yeah.
we know Ressler wanted to get right, and we know that Quin Snyder was itching to get back into the coaching realm, and he knew that based off of from a strictly basketball situation, they had what he needed in order to be able to do something with it.
Right. And one of the things that Landry Fields mentioned in what he was looking for in his next head coach was someone who could come in and change the culture, affect the culture, and kind of dictate the direction that the culture was going in. And I think that when you're someone like Quin Snyder, who really walked away of his own accord from the Utah Jazz, he walked away basically citing that he felt like his players maybe needed a new voice, kind of maybe it was time. So he
Right.
kind of understands walking
Yeah.
into a situation
Good
where
point.
new voices needed, having walked out of a situation where he felt maybe a new voice was needed. I also think that someone who was with the Hawks fairly recently. He was there during the last portion of the tenure of Coach Mike Budenholzer. I think that that speaks volumes because, hey, if he didn't want to come, to your point, it could have been, well, spoke to Coach Bud. Yeah, brother
I'm
said, don't
good.
go
Yeah,
back. I'm good.
easily,
But
easily.
he didn't say that. And so I think that's a huge component there as well. He's someone who wants to be here. And why is that important? Because you've got to look at this from a long-term and short-term perspective. They obviously brought him in, like we said, because the thought was, hey, there are some other teams after him, and we want to make sure we get our guy before they do. But I believe the other piece is the Hawks were not content in accepting that this season was a lost cause. So if
Mm.
they could go on a serious run in the last 21 games, and of course, giving credit to Joe Prunty for them going 2-0 in those first two games of the post Nate McMillan era, but if they could go on a run in the last 21 games of the season under somebody who they felt could get the Hawks there, then why not go ahead and get that regime started soon? And I think you mentioned another piece there when we're talking about the culture and kind of the future. And that's kind of a question that was running through my head as well that I wanted to ask you about. When you look at the short term, okay, obviously the Hawks are in eighth place. And when we look at the teams right above them, the Heat, the Knicks, the Nets, etc., these are teams that even the Cavs as recently as Friday, these are all teams that they've beaten so that they can definitely make some headway to keep themselves or get themselves out of the play-in round. But I also think, hey, we know from a short-term perspective, we agree Snyder's probably a good fit for this current roster. But as he's making moves in these last 21 games and understanding what the culture of the Hawks is, Jarvis, for me, you still got to look at what's going forward. So I feel like Snyder, what can he build on based on what he's seen, what we've seen in these two games in the Nate McMillan era? Or what do we expect that he'll see in these next 21 games that'll dictate what we see on this roster for going forward?
I think that this is all about whether or not they can make this roster as it's currently constructed with the money. I'm talking about the money guys. The bench
Yes.
guys, those guys are fluid. They'll be able to swap them out and do what they need to do as far as to be able, as to filling out the back end of this roster. But I'm talking about the guys that got them checks. I'm talking about Trey. I don't think he's going anywhere. I'm talking about DeJounte Murray as well. So
Yeah.
and as far as DeJounte Murray, you're talking about DeAndre Hunter, John Collins. I think that's
Mhm.
the real big piece. What
Oh,
does
yeah.
John Collins look like in Quin Snyder's system? Is he a fit? And are we going to have to look at going forward and trying to get something in return for him and not necessarily getting what we would like? So I think that's another reason why I feel like Quin Snyder is getting here in here immediately because, like, hey, he wanted to get a really good 21 game sample size into what this team will look like as it's currently constructed, sitting right there, right up under that luxury tax threshold. Because we know Tony Ressler wants answers when it comes to that.
Yeah, I would agree. And yeah, it's a good enough sample size for him to be able to make a decision. Because honestly, what we've been talking about most of all has been, oh, okay, well, look how great Donovan Mitchell was and the relationship that he had with Coach Quin Snyder, which, hey, he was successful. Rudy Gobert, look how great he was. That's great. So assume that you've got a Trey Young and you've got a Clint Capella, although we don't really know what the rest of that looks like. But I'll be interested, to your point, to see what happens with the rest of the guys because Quin Snyder had other guys under him, like a
Right.
Bojan Bogdanovic. He had a Mike Conley. He had a Derek Favors and a Joe Ingles. What are some of the things that he did with those players, or what are some of the things that he saw in those players that are going to help him to hone in not just on John Collins, but for me, Jarvis, it's really the 2, 3, and the 4 because you kind of
Mm-hmm.
already know what you got in the 1 and kind of know what you got in the 5. But I want to see what does Quin Snyder do with the 2, 3, and the 4, or what does he see in the 2, 3, and the 4 to tell him what he's going to need for the rest of the season. But hey, guys, finally, you can feast on Built Bars because of excitement and not stress. Why? Because
Yes.
United gave you guys a win, an amazing win on Saturday in their season opener at home against the San Jose Earthquakes. And then Trey Young gave you all of the drama and the Hogs that you could handle on Sunday, but they came out with the dub as well. Now they got themselves a new head coach in Quin Snyder. So celebrate with a Built Bar because you get 17 grams of protein, which is absolutely amazing. Easily soluble. What that means to you is you get that energy boost that much quicker by eating a Built Bar. And the flavors are cool. We're talking about 100% real chocolate, churro, and almond. And you can go and pick it up at your local Walmart or even your
Mm-hmm.
Sam's Club. If you love to do like me, I am frugal. So I love to buy everything in bulk.
Yes,
But
indeed.
admittedly, there are some things that I like to buy and don't like to go out and have to shop for it. And that's where built.com comes in. So don't forget, this is also cool for you. Hey, look, we all know you want to get your sexy back because what? That weather out there is starting to
Warming
warm
up.
up. And the way you get your sexy back is not for you to go out there eating unhealthy food, but to eat something like a Built Bar where all you're going to natch is 130 calories and you can keep it pushing so you can be like Jarvis and me, get your grown and sexy on. So when we see you in the streets, we'll be like, you had your Built Bar. You had your Built Bar. Don't forget, get yourself a Built Bar.